3 months had passed since the humans left. The council carried on with business as usual. Most alien leaders had barely noticed the empty human chairs in the meeting halls. Those who did notice thought the humans would come back soon. Humans always came back, they believed. They needed the council more than the council needed them. Chancellor Vextel of the Zephyrian Empire was giving a speech about trade prosperity when the first report arrived. His aide, a young Zephyrian named Kexalor, whispered in his ear during the middle of the speech. "Sir, we have a problem in the Outer Rim territories." Vextal barely paused in his speech. "Handle it after the meeting," he whispered back. But Kexalor shook his head. "Sir, this cannot wait. The merchant ships are being attacked by pirates. 7 ships lost this week alone." Vextal frowned. Pirate attacks were not uncommon, but 7 ships in 1 week was unusual. Still, he finished his speech before calling for a break. In the break room, Kexalor showed him the reports on a datapad. "The attacks are happening along the Kepler trade route. The merchant captains are asking where the patrol ships are." "What do you mean, where are the patrol ships?" Vextal asked. "Send the usual patrol." Kexalor's face went pale. "Sir, the usual patrol was run by human ships. They are gone." Vextal stared at the datapad. The Kepler trade route was one of the busiest shipping lanes in Council space. Thousands of ships used it every day. For 15 years, human patrol vessels had kept it safe. Small ships, nothing fancy, but they were always there, always watching, always ready to help merchants in trouble. "Well, send our ships then," Vextal said. "Sir, our ships are protecting our own territory. We do not have enough vessels to patrol alien trade routes, too." Vextal felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "What about the reptilian Dominarch? They have plenty of ships." Kexalor pulled up another report. "I already asked. Dominarch Sasthak said his ships will not risk themselves protecting other species' merchant vessels. He said trade protection is not a military priority." Across the station, similar conversations were happening in other government offices. The Crystalline Collective had lost 2 mining barges to pirate attacks. The Aquatic Federation reported that their food shipments were being hijacked. The Tree People's colony supply ships were afraid to leave their home ports. Trade Captain Zolnax of the Merchant Guild paced in his office. His communication system kept beeping with new distress. Calls. Cargo ships requesting escort, passenger liners asking for protection, merchant captains wanting to know when the patrol ships would return. "When will the humans come back?" asked his assistant, a nervous insectoid named Clicktar. "They are not coming back," Zolnax said, looking at the stack of attack reports on his desk. "At least not anytime soon." "But who will protect our ships?" Zolnax had no answer. For 20 years, human patrol ships had made space travel safe. They were not the biggest ships or the most heavily armed, but they were reliable. They showed up when called. They asked for nothing in return except the right to trade freely in Council space. Now they were gone, and nobody wanted to replace them. Back on Earth, Kyle Johnson sat in his office at the Luna mining station reading the reports from Council space. The communication channels were still open, even though Earth was no longer part of the Council. Trade ships still sent emergency signals on the old frequencies. Merchant captains still called for help on channels that humans used to monitor. Kyle could see the pattern forming. Without human patrol ships, the pirates were getting bolder. They knew the Council species would not work together to stop them. The Zephyrians would protect Zephyrian ships. The Reptilians would protect Reptilian ships, but nobody would protect the small traders and independent merchants who made the galaxy's economy work. "Should we respond to these distress calls?" asked his assistant, Engineer Betty Clark. Kyle shook his head. "Our orders are clear. We are no longer part of the Council. Their problems are not our problems." But Kyle felt bad watching the reports pile up. Good people were dying out there. Honest. Merchants were losing their ships and cargo. Families were being torn apart by pirate attacks. On the council station, the daily security briefing was getting longer and more depressing. Security Chief Thokmar of the Stone People read through the weekly crime reports. Pirate attacks were up 300%. Merchant insurance rates had doubled. Several trade routes were being abandoned entirely. What are our options? Asked Council President Yildar. Thokmar looked around the room at the other council leaders. We could ask each member species to contribute ships for joint patrols. Dominarch Sesthok hissed his disapproval. The reptilian navy will not waste fuel protecting alien merchants. Our ships have more important duties. Like what? Asked President Yildar. Like protecting our own borders from the hegemonic empire. Chancellor Vextal nodded in agreement. The Zephyrians also cannot spare ships for patrol duty. We have our own security concerns. One by one, each council member found reasons why they could not help. Their ships were too busy. Their budgets were too small. Their political situations were too complex. President Yildar felt frustrated. The humans managed to patrol these trade routes for 20 years. How did they afford it? Security Chief Thokmar checked his records. According to our files, the humans used modified civilian ships for patrol duty. They were not expensive. Military vessels, just regular ships with extra communication equipment and light weapons. Then why cannot we do the same? Thokmar looked uncomfortable. The humans volunteered for patrol duty, sir. Their captains took the job because they believed it was the right thing to do. Our ship captains want to be paid for such dangerous work. How much would it cost? Thokmar pulled up some numbers on his data pad. To properly patrol all the trade routes that humans use to cover, we would need at least 200 ships. The cost would be approximately 50 million credits per month. The room went quiet. 50 million credits per month was more than most council members spent on their entire space programs. The humans did this for free? Asked Chancellor Vextal. Yes, sir. They said safe trade routes benefited everyone, so everyone should help maintain them. President Yildar felt a growing sense of unease. What else did the humans do for free? Thokmar consulted his files again. They provided emergency medical assistance to any ship in distress. They helped repair damaged vessels. They offered rescue services for ships with mechanical problems. They shared navigation data and weather warnings with all council species. All. For free? Yes, sir. They said it was part of being good neighbors. The council leaders sat in silence, thinking about what they had lost. Not just patrol ships, but an entire network of support services that had made space travel safer and easier for everyone. Outside the meeting room, ordinary citizens of the council were beginning to feel the effects too. Cargo prices were rising, as shipping companies had to pay for private security. Some goods were becoming hard to find as merchant ships avoided dangerous routes. Insurance costs for space travel were making tickets too expensive for many families. The first cracks in the council's foundation were starting to show, and the humans had only been gone for 3 months. Jake Morrison closed the last box in his office and looked around the empty room. 20 years he had worked here as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. 20 years of trying to make his voice heard in meetings where other species talked over him. 20 years of watching alien leaders dismiss human ideas only to claim them as their own later. The office felt strange without his belongings. The walls showed clean squares where his pictures had hung. Pictures of Earth, pictures of his family, pictures of human colonies spread across the galaxy. Now all of those pictures sat in boxes, ready to go home. Jake picked up his communication device and spoke into it. This is Ambassador Morrison. All human personnel are to report to the transport ships within 2 hours. Pack everything. We are not coming back. Down the hall, Dr. Lisa Carter heard the announcement in her laboratory. She had been working on a new medicine that could help all the species in the council. The research was almost complete. Almost. Ready to save millions of lives across the galaxy. Lisa looked at her work computer screen. Years of research data filled the files. Test results that could change medicine forever. She reached over and pressed a button. The screen went dark. Then she pulled out a small storage device and plugged it into the computer. "Copy all files," she said to the computer, copying files to personal storage device. The computer replied in its calm voice. Lisa watched the progress bar move across the screen. 90%, 95%, 100%. She pulled out the storage device and put it in her pocket. Then she pressed another button. "Delete all files from main computer," she said. "Are you sure? This action cannot be undone," the computer asked. "Yes, delete everything." The screen flashed once and went blank. 20 years of human medical research disappeared from the Council's computers. Lisa smiled and walked out of the laboratory. She did not look back. In the military section of the station, Captain Nathan Brooks was talking to his security team. 50 human soldiers stood in front of him. They had protected this station for 15 years. They had stopped pirates and rebels and kept the peace in Council space. "Pack your gear," Nathan told his soldiers. "We leave in 1 hour." "Sir, what about the patrol schedules?" asked Sergeant Amy Wilson. "Who will guard the outer zones?" Nathan shrugged. "Not our problem anymore. The Council can figure it out." The soldiers began packing their weapons and equipment. They took everything that belonged to Earth. They left behind only the basic station systems that kept the lights on and the air flowing. On the other side of the station, engineer Kyle Johnson was shutting down the human-built systems. The Council had always said these systems were primitive, old-fashioned, not as good as alien technology, but somehow these primitive systems kept breaking down when humans were not around to fix them. Kyle opened the control panel for the water recycling system, the system that cleaned and reused all the water on the station, the system that human engineers had built because the alien systems kept failing. He typed a command into the computer. "Transfer system control to local operators only," he typed. The computer beeped. "Warning, system will require manual maintenance every 6 hours. No automatic backup protocols available." Kyle smiled. The aliens would learn real fast how primitive human engineering was when they had to fix everything by hand. In another part of the station, communications officer Jenny Adams was erasing files from the main communication network. Not just any files. The translation protocols that let all the different alien species talk to each other. Humans had built these protocols after joining the Council. Before that, Council meetings took 3 times as long because nobody could understand each other properly. Jenny watched the deletion progress move across her screen. Without these protocols, the Council would go back to using the old translation systems that got simple words wrong and turned friendly conversations into angry arguments. "Deletion complete," the computer announced. Jenny stood up and grabbed her bag. She walked toward the transport ships where hundreds of other humans were gathering. Scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers, soldiers, farmers, all leaving quietly. No angry speeches, no threats, no demands. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood at the airlock watching his people board the ships. Dr. Lisa Carter walked past carrying her research boxes. Captain Nathan Brooks led his soldiers up the ramp. Engineer Kyle Johnson wheeled a cart full of tools toward the cargo hold. "Are we making the right choice, sir?" asked Communications Officer Jenny Adams as she approached Jake. Jake looked back at the Council station. Through the windows, he could see alien workers going about their daily business. Most of them did not even know the humans were leaving. They thought humans were just another species in the Council. Useful sometimes, but not really important. "They will figure out how important we were," Jake said quietly. "When their systems start breaking down, when their economy stops working, when they cannot talk to each other without fighting, they will remember us then." The last human ship pulled away from the station 3 hours later. No alarms sounded. No emergency announcements filled the air. The alien workers barely noticed. In the Council meeting hall, the afternoon session continued as planned. The Zephyrian Chancellor spoke about trade regulations. The reptilian dominarch argued about mining rights. The crystalline collective demanded better treatment for their colony worlds. Nobody mentioned that the human ambassador's chair sat empty. Nobody asked where the human delegation had gone. Nobody seemed to care that 20 years of human participation in the council had ended without a single word. The human ships turned toward Earth and jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the great council station continued its work. The lights stayed on. The air kept flowing. Everything seemed normal. But deep in the station's computer systems, small problems were already starting. Automatic repairs that usually fixed themselves were failing. Communication errors that normally corrected themselves were spreading. Transportation schedules that typically ran smoothly were beginning to show gaps. The humans were gone. And slowly, very slowly, the council was about to learn what that really meant. 6 months after the humans left, Dr. Velnox of the Crystalline Collective stared at the broken atmospheric processor on Delta Persei. The massive machine sat silent in the middle of what should have been a thriving colony world. Instead of clean air and comfortable temperatures, the planet still had the same poisonous atmosphere it had when the terraforming project began 5 years ago. "Can you fix it?" asked Colony Administrator Poltax, a nervous tree person who had been waiting for this world to become livable. Dr. Velnox examined the machine's control panel. Lights blinked in patterns that made no sense. Error messages scrolled across screens, in human writing that none of his team could read properly. "I do not understand how this machine works," he admitted. "But you are the Council's best atmospheric engineer," Poltax said. "I am the best crystalline atmospheric engineer," Velnox corrected. "These machines were built by humans. They work differently than our technology." The atmospheric processor was not like other Council machines. Most alien technology followed logical patterns that any trained engineer could understand. This human machine seemed to break all the normal rules. It had systems that should not work together but somehow did. It used materials in ways that made no sense but produced amazing results. Poltax felt panic rising in his chest. "There must be instruction manuals, technical documents, something that explains how to fix it." Dr. Velnox had already checked. "The humans took all their technical files when they left. What remains in our computers is basic maintenance information only, nothing about complex repairs." Across the galaxy, similar problems were appearing on dozens of Council worlds. Human-built water purification systems were failing on colony planets. Mining equipment designed by human engineers had broken down, and nobody could fix it. Transportation. Networks that humans had designed were developing problems that alien technicians could not solve. On the research station orbiting Proxima Beta, Chief Scientist Wextal was having his own crisis. His team had been working for 3 years on a new type of energy shield. The project was almost complete when the humans left. Now it was stuck. "What is the problem?" asked his assistant, Dr. Kilmex. Wextal pointed at the shield generator. The power coupling system was designed by Dr. Amanda Walsh before she left. "I cannot figure out how she made it work." Dr. Kilmex examined the human-built components. They looked simple enough, just metal and circuits like any other technology. But when he tried to understand how they functioned, nothing made sense. "Human engineering is illogical," he said. "They use materials in the wrong combinations. They ignore safety protocols. They build things that should explode but somehow work perfectly." Wextal nodded sadly. Dr. Walsh called it creative problem solving. She said humans do not think about why something should not work. They only think about making it work. The SHIELD project was not the only research that had stopped. Across Council space, dozens of scientific projects were failing without human input. Medical research that could save lives, agricultural improvements that could feed hungry colonies, transportation innovations that could connect distant worlds. The humans had been involved in almost every major Council research project, not as leaders, but as contributors. They had a way of looking at problems that other species found useful. When alien scientists said something was impossible, humans would ask, "What if we tried it anyway?" Dr. Amanda Walsh read the reports from her laboratory on Earth's moon. She could see which projects were failing and why. Most of the problems had simple solutions that any human engineer could fix in a few hours. But the Council had made it clear that human knowledge was not welcome anymore. "Should we send them some help?" asked her research partner, Dr. Carl Patterson. Amanda shook her head. "They never listened to our ideas when we were there. They called our methods primitive and dangerous. Maybe they will appreciate human engineering more after trying to do without it." Back on the Council station, Emergency Coordinator Theklar was dealing with a growing list of technical failures. The food production systems on 12 colony worlds were breaking down. The climate control networks on 6 space stations were malfunctioning. The transportation grid that connected outer colonies to the main shipping routes was developing serious problems. "How long until we can get these systems repaired?" asked Council President Yildar. Theklar looked at his reports. "Sir, most of these systems were built or modified by human engineers. Our technicians do not have the training to fix them properly." "Then train them?" "Sir, we do not have the technical manuals. The humans took all their engineering documents when they left." President Yildar felt frustrated. "What about reverse engineering? Can our scientists figure out how these systems work by studying them?" "We have been trying, sir. But human technology is very different from ours. They use methods that our engineers consider wrong or dangerous." "Give me an example." Theklar pulled up a report about the water purification system on New Zephyr Colony. The humans built a filtration system that should not work according to our understanding of chemistry. It uses chemical combinations that should be unstable, but somehow it produces cleaner water than any of our systems can make. So copy their design exactly. "We tried, sir. When we build the same system using the same materials, it does not work. Something about the way humans put it together makes the difference, something we do not understand." President Yildar realized they were facing a bigger problem than he had thought. The humans had not just contributed labor to Council projects, they had contributed knowledge and skills that other species did not possess. "What about hiring human engineers as contractors?" he asked. Theklar shook his head. "I sent messages to several human engineering companies. They all declined to work with the Council." "Did they say why?" "They said the Council had made it clear that human contributions were not valued. They prefer to work with clients who appreciate their efforts." In the Outer Rim territories, mining operations were shutting down as human-built equipment failed. The machines were not breaking completely, but they were running at reduced efficiency. What used to be profitable mining sites were now losing money. Mining supervisor Hextar of the Stone People stood in front of a massive excavation machine that was moving at half speed. Human engineers had modified this machine 2 years ago to work in the planet's extreme gravity. Now it was struggling to function. "Can we get replacement parts?" asked his foreman. "The parts are available," Hextar said, "but they have to be installed by certified human technicians, and there are no human technicians working in Council space anymore." "What if we install the parts ourselves?" Hextar had already checked. "The warranty becomes void if non-human technicians work on the machine. If we break it during repairs, the manufacturer will not fix it." The mining operation had no choice but to shut down until they could find qualified repair services. Similar shutdowns were happening across Council space as human-maintained equipment failed and nobody else could fix it. Transportation networks were having problems too. The hyperspace relay stations that connected distant parts of Council territory were showing signs of stress. Human technicians had regularly updated and maintained these stations. Without proper maintenance, communication delays were increasing and some signals were being lost entirely. On Earth, Communications Director Jenny Adams monitored the deteriorating Council networks from her office in Geneva. She could see the data transmission errors accumulating. She could track the increasing delays in hyperspace communications. She knew exactly what needed to be done to fix the problems. But Earth's government had been very clear. Humanity was no longer part of the Council. Council problems were not human problems anymore. The aliens would have to figure out their technical difficulties on their own. "It seems wrong to just watch them struggle," said her assistant, Tech, Specialist Gary Miller. Jenny agreed, but she had her orders. "They spent 20 years telling us our technology was inferior. They said alien methods were better than human methods. Now they can prove it." The innovation drought was just beginning. Without human creativity and problem-solving skills, the Council's technological progress was slowing to a crawl. Projects that should have been completed in months were taking years. Simple problems that humans could solve quickly were becoming major crises, and the worst was yet to come. 1 year after the humans left, Admiral Groktar of the Reptilian Navy received the worst news of his military career. 3 Council border stations had been destroyed in surprise attacks by the hegemonic empire. The enemy had struck fast and disappeared before Council forces could respond. "How did they get past our sensors?" Admiral Groktar asked his intelligence officer. Major Sus Cole looked nervous as he delivered his report. "Sir, they used a new attack pattern we have never seen before. Instead of direct assault, they sent small groups of ships to attack from multiple directions at once." Admiral Groktar studied the battle reports. The attacks made no sense according to proper military strategy. The Empire ships had ignored the strongest targets and focused on support systems instead. They had destroyed power generators, communication arrays, and supply depots while leaving the main defense guns untouched. "This is not how space battles are supposed to work," Admiral Groktar said. "You attack the enemy's strongest points first. You face them with honor in direct combat." "Yes, sir. But this strategy was very effective. Our stations lost power and communications quickly. The defense guns could not function without power. The Empire ships destroyed them easily after the support systems failed." Admiral Groktar felt confused and angry. The hegemonic empire had always fought with honor before. They would announce their attacks. They would challenge Council forces to fair combat. They would fight ship against ship in proper formations. This new strategy was dishonest. It was sneaky. It was the kind of fighting that humans had always suggested, but that proper military officers rejected as cowardly. On the other side of Council space, General Thokvin was dealing with a similar problem. Empire raiders were attacking supply. Convoys using hit-and-run tactics. They would appear without warning, destroy a few ships, and vanish before Council forces could respond. "Our patrol ships cannot catch them," reported Captain Velcox. "They do not fight fair. They run away when we arrive." General Thokvin had trained for 40 years in proper military strategy. Enemies were supposed to stand and fight. They were supposed to meet force with force. Running away from battle was shameful and cowardly. "What do our tactical computers recommend?" he asked. Captain Velcox checked the analysis. "The computers suggest we increase patrol density and create overlapping sensor networks to detect enemy ships earlier. Then do it." But increasing patrols meant spreading their forces thinner. The Council Navy did not have enough ships to be everywhere at once. The Empire raiders seemed to know exactly where the patrol ships were and would attack in areas with light coverage. Back on Earth, General Claire Bennett watched the Council's military troubles from her office at Strategic Command. She had access to the same intelligence reports that Council forces were getting. She could see exactly what the hegemonic empire was doing and why it was so effective. "They are using asymmetric warfare," she explained to her staff during the daily briefing. "Instead of matching Council strength with strength, they are attacking weaknesses." "Should we warn the Council?" asked Colonel Frank Davis. General Bennett shook her head. "The Council spent years telling us that human military tactics were dishonorable. They said our ideas about flexible strategy were cowardly. They wanted to fight their wars the traditional way. But people are dying," Colonel Davis pointed out. "Yes, they are, and that is tragic. But the Council chose to reject human military advice when we offered it freely. Now they can learn the hard way why we developed these tactics. The Council military had always followed rigid rules about how wars should be fought. Ships fought, in formal formations. Battles happened at agreed locations. Both sides used similar weapons and strategies. It was predictable and orderly. Human military advisors had tried to explain that real enemies would not follow these rules. They had suggested training for irregular warfare and surprise attacks. The Council leaders had rejected these ideas as barbaric and dishonorable. Now the hegemonic empire was proving the humans right. On the Council station, Defense Minister Yexdal called an emergency meeting of all military commanders. The situation was getting worse every day. Empire forces were attacking deeper into Council territory and causing more damage with each raid. We need new strategies to counter these attacks, Minister Yexdal announced. Admiral Groktar spoke first. Sir, these Empire tactics are dishonest. They do not fight with honor. We should demand that they face us in proper battle. The Empire does not care about our demands, Minister Yexdal replied. They are winning using these methods. Why would they change? General Thakvin had an idea. Perhaps we should use similar tactics against them. Fight dishonor with dishonor. The room went quiet. The suggestion was shocking to career military officers who had spent their lives following proper procedures. We cannot abandon our principles, Admiral Groktar said. If we fight like barbarians, we become barbarians. But if we do not adapt, we will lose this war, General Thakvin argued. Minister Yexdal looked around the room at his commanders. They were good officers, but they had been trained for a different kind of war, a war with rules and honor and predictable outcomes. Do we have any records of how humans handled irregular warfare? He asked. His aide, Captain Zilmar, checked the military database. Sir, most human military documents were classified and removed when they left. We have some basic training manuals, but nothing about advanced tactics. What about hiring human military contractors? Captain Zilmar had already researched this option. Sir, I contacted several human defense companies. They all declined to work with the Council. Did they give reasons? They said the Council had rejected human military expertise for years. They prefer to work with clients who value their knowledge. Minister Yexdal felt frustrated. The Council needed help, but they had burned their bridges with the people who could provide it. Meanwhile, the Empire attacks continued. Each raid was more daring than the last. Empire forces were learning from their successes and developing new tactics. They would attack supply lines one day and communication networks the next. They never stayed in one area long enough for Council forces to respond effectively. The worst attack came 3 weeks later. Empire raiders destroyed the main defense satellite around the industrial world of Kepler Prime. The satellite had protected 3 million civilians and dozens of important factories. Without the satellite's shields, the planet was defenseless. Empire forces could attack at will. The civilian government evacuated the planet's population to refugee camps on other worlds. Admiral Groktar studied the attack reports in his command center. The Empire had used only 12 ships to destroy a defense system that had taken 20 years to build. They had attacked the satellite's weak points while avoiding its weapons entirely. How did they know where the weak points were? He asked his analysts. Sir, the satellite's design flaws were documented in human military reports from 5 years ago, replied Intelligence Officer Kexmore. The humans warned us that the station was vulnerable to coordinated small ship attacks. Admiral Groktar felt sick. We ignored their warnings. Yes, sir. The Council Defense Committee decided that human concerns were overblown. They said the satellite design was perfectly adequate for defense against honorable enemies. But the Empire is not fighting honorably. No, sir. They are fighting to win. On Earth, military analysts watched the destruction of Kepler Prime's defenses with professional interest. The attack had followed exactly the pattern that human strategists had predicted years earlier. The Empire was using textbook asymmetric warfare tactics. Could we have prevented this? Asked Captain Ellen Brooks during a strategy review. General Bennett nodded. Easily. The defense satellite had several obvious vulnerabilities that could have been fixed with minor modifications. We recommended those fixes 5 years ago. What did the Council say? They said human paranoia was unnecessary. They believed the satellite was strong enough to handle any reasonable threat. But this was not a reasonable threat. No, it was not. And that was exactly our point. Enemies do not attack your strengths. They attack your weaknesses. The Council never understood that principle. The military situation continued to deteriorate. Council forces were losing battles they should have won easily. Their superior numbers and advanced technology meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight fair. Without human military advisors to suggest adaptive strategies, the Council military was stuck using outdated tactics against a modernizing enemy. The Empire was learning and evolving, while the Council remained rigid and predictable. The war was just beginning, and the Council was already losing.
18 months after the humans left, Trade Administrator Polvex stared at the economic reports on his desk with growing horror. The numbers were worse than anyone had predicted. Galactic trade was down 60% from pre-departure levels. Unemployment across Council space had doubled. Several colony worlds were facing food shortages. How did this happen so quickly? He asked his economic advisor, Dr. Kail single quotes next. Dr. Killanex pulled up charts on her datapad. Sir, we underestimated how much the galactic economy depended on human coordination systems. When they left, they took more than just their ships and people. They took the entire logistics network that made interstellar trade possible. Polvex looked confused. What do you mean logistics network? Sir, humans handled cargo routing for most major shipping companies. They coordinated delivery schedules between different species. They managed warehouse operations on dozens of worlds. They even handled currency exchange rates between different planetary systems. Polvex had never realized how much work happened behind the scenes of galactic trade. He had thought commerce was simple. Ships carried goods from one world to another. People bought and sold things. Money changed hands. It seemed straightforward. But surely other species can do these jobs, he said. Dr. Killanex shook her head. We tried, sir. The problem is that humans had developed systems that worked across all species barriers. They could coordinate between crystalline mathematical precision and reptilian aggressive scheduling. They could balance tree people patience with insectoid urgency. Give me a specific example. Dr. Killanex showed him a shipping report from the agricultural world of Green Haven. This planet produces food for 12 other worlds. The humans created a delivery schedule that satisfied everyone. Reptilians got their meat shipments when they needed them. Tree people received their specialized fertilizers on schedule. Crystalline colonies got exact quantities of minerals at precise times. What happened when the humans left? The new scheduling system could not handle the complexity. Reptilian ships arrived late, causing food spoilage. Tree people shipments were delayed, killing crops during critical growing periods. Crystalline orders were delivered in wrong quantities, disrupting their precise manufacturing processes. Polvex looked at more reports. The pattern was everywhere. Without human coordination, the careful balance of galactic trade was falling. Apart, on the mining world of Deep Core, Mine Supervisor Hexstar was dealing with a warehouse crisis. Mountains of processed metals sat in storage facilities with nowhere to go. The shipping schedules that had moved these materials for 20 years no longer worked. When will the transport ships arrive? Asked Foreman Greigtal. Hexstar checked his communication system. The Zephyrian ships are 3 weeks late. The reptilian vessels changed their route without notice. The crystalline transporters are demanding payment in advance before they will pick up cargo. What about independent shipping companies? Most of them work through human brokers. Without the brokers, nobody knows who to contact or how to arrange transportation. The same problems were happening across the galaxy. Manufacturing worlds. could not get raw materials. Agricultural planets could not ship food to hungry colonies. Industrial centers were shutting down production lines because supply chains had broken. On the pleasure world of Paradise Station, casino owner Vexlux was watching his business collapse. The gambling halls that used to be filled with tourists from dozens of species now sat mostly empty. "Where are all our customers?" he asked his manager Kilrex. "Sir, most of our business came from human tourists and the aliens who traveled with them," Kilrex explained. "Humans were good customers themselves, but they also brought friends from other species. Mixed tour groups, diplomatic parties, business, conferences. So find new customers," Kilrex had tried. "The problem is that different species like different types of entertainment. Reptilians want violent combat sports. Tree people prefer quiet nature experiences. Crystallines enjoy mathematical puzzles. Humans were the only species that could enjoy everything and bring different groups together, without human tourists. To serve as bridges between different cultures, Paradise Station's entertainment industry was fragmenting. Each species wanted different things, and it was not profitable to cater to small specialized groups. The economic problems were not just about shipping and tourism. Currency exchange was becoming a major crisis. For 20 years, human banks had managed exchange rates between different planetary monetary systems. They had created stability and predictability in galactic finance. Financial advisor Zekmar of the Galactic Banking Consortium was dealing with currency chaos. Exchange rates were swinging wildly as different species tried to protect their own economic interests. "The reptilian credit has lost 30% of its value this month," reported currency analyst Vex Valoom. "The Zephyrian standard is up 40%. The crystalline unit is fluctuating by 10% every day. What is causing this instability?" Zekmar asked. "Sir, without human financial coordination, each species is manipulating currency values to benefit their own trade. Reptilians are devaluing their currency to make exports cheaper. Zephyrians are inflating theirs to make imports more expensive. Crystallines are adjusting rates daily based on mathematical formulas that nobody else understands." Zekmar realized that currency stability had depended on human banks serving as neutral intermediaries. Humans had no strong preference for any particular currency, so they could manage exchange rates fairly. Other species always favored their own monetary systems on Earth. Economist Peter Hayes was tracking the Council's economic collapse from his office in New York. The data was fascinating from an academic perspective, but tragic from a humanitarian. 1. Entire worlds were facing economic depression because of cascading system failures. "Should we offer economic assistance?" asked his research partner, Dr. Carol Manning. Peter shook his head. The Council made it clear they did not want human economic advice. They said our financial methods were too primitive for advanced galactic civilization. "But people are suffering." "Yes, they are. And that breaks my heart. But we offered to help 20 years ago. We explained how interconnected the galactic economy had become. They told us to mind our own business." The Council had never understood how much economic work humans were doing behind the scenes. They saw human contributions as minor support services, not essential infrastructure. Now they were learning the difference. Manufacturing centers across Council space were shutting down as supply chains collapsed. The industrial world of Factory Prime had operated at maximum capacity for decades, producing goods for hundreds of other planets. Now half its production lines sat idle. Factory manager Grokvex read through supply reports with growing despair. "We cannot get rare earth metals from Mining World 7. The agricultural colonies are not shipping food for our workers. The transport companies cannot coordinate delivery schedules." "What about local suppliers?" asked production supervisor Kekstar. "Local suppliers can only provide basic materials. The specialized components we need come from dozens of different worlds. The human logistics network was the only system that could coordinate such complex supply chains. Similar shutdowns were happening everywhere. Advanced manufacturing required materials from multiple worlds, processed by different species, delivered on precise schedules. Without human coordination, This complex ballet of interstellar commerce was falling apart. The unemployment crisis was spreading as factories closed and shipping companies went bankrupt. Millions of workers across council space were losing their jobs. Social unrest was beginning to appear on several worlds as economic hardship deepened. On the agricultural world of fertile plains, Farmer Zexler was watching his crops rot in the fields. The transport ships that should have carried his produce to hungry colonies had not arrived on schedule. "Can we find other buyers?" asked his son, young Zexamore. "I have tried," Zexler said sadly. "But the human trade networks connected us to customers across the galaxy. Without those networks, I do not know who needs our crops or how to contact them." Fertile plains had produced food for 20 different worlds. Human agricultural coordinators had matched crop production with planetary needs, ensuring that food went where it was needed most. Now that coordination system was gone, and both farmers and hungry colonies were suffering. The economic collapse was accelerating. Each failed business created ripple effects that hurt other companies. Each broken supply chain caused shortages that drove up prices and reduced consumer spending. Each unemployed worker meant less demand for goods and services. Council leaders were finally beginning to understand what they had lost when the humans left. Not just ships and soldiers and scientists, but the invisible infrastructure that made galactic civilization possible. The humans had been the glue holding the council economy together, and without them, everything was falling apart. The worst was still to come. As economic hardship deepened, political tensions between council species were beginning to rise. Old grudges that had been forgotten during prosperous times were starting to resurface. The council itself was beginning to fracture along economic and cultural lines. Without human mediators to find compromise solutions. The council's political unity was as fragile as its eco.